Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Divine Farmer Health podcast. I'm Jimmy, the Acu Sensei, and I've got Chris, the nutritionist, here, and we're excited to continue our conversation. I think we left off last time about intermittent fasting. Am I correct?
Yeah. We had quite a few questions on that feed, so I thought it'd be really interesting to be able to go through some of those and answer those questions for folks.
Yeah.
And then we can keep going if we want and have time.
And I've got Chris, the nutritionist, here, and we're excited. All right.
Oh,
there we go.
okay. So let's answer some of those questions that came in because they were good questions. First one that someone asked, because I've done some videos on lemon juice in the morning, and lemon juice first thing in the morning, juicing a half a lemon, putting in it about 4 to 6 ounces of water, drinking it first thing in the morning helps activate the bile ducts in the liver and the gallbladder. And oftentimes, you know, how many people have had their gallbladder out? Millions of people, right? Mm-hmm. So keeping those gallbladder ducts open is really key. And that's a great way to start your day. Someone asked about thyroid medication, because a lot of people are supposed to take their thyroid medication first thing in the morning upon rising. Great, do that, wait 30 minutes, then do your lemon juice. There should be no problem there with that. Your thyroid medication will have left the stomach by then. And you can do that. The other question was, will it break a fast? So we were talking about fasting last week. We were talking about intermittent fasting would be, you know, not eating until like 10 in the morning or something. It will not break a fast. It's not, there's not enough sugar or carbohydrate in the lemon juice to break a fast. And think about lemon having an oil in it. That's one of the benefits of the lemon and helping open up the bile ducts is lemon juice has oil and it's a fat. So that's not a carbohydrate. What breaks a fast is when we have a carbohydrate sufficient enough to produce insulin response in the body. That breaks your fast. So that little bit of carb might be 2 grams or something is not enough. Another question is coffee, about breaking a fast with coffee. And if you have coffee with pure cream in it, like straight cream, which is pure fat, you're not going to break a fast. But if you're loading up your coffee with sweeteners, yeah, it's going to break a fast. Black coffee is fine. So the other question was stevia. Stevia being a more all-natural, not artificial, but a sweetener that is not sugar. There is some controversy on that one, actually. There's been some research that shows stevia can trigger insulin response in the body. I don't think we've seen enough studies yet. No one's really camped out on this for a while, but stevia is a very popular sweetener that is used in the paleo and the keto and that kind of world. And it's certainly a way better choice than using aspartame, you know, or sweet and low or any of these things. But does it break a fast? You know, I don't know that we know enough yet, but it seems to still tell the brain that sweet is coming down the pike because it is very sweet, right? It's way, 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 way more sweet than plain old sugar. So it's still that undetermined whether or not stevia will break a fast. So those are some questions on things that would break a fast. Did you see any other ones on that, Jimmy?
I'll have to go through the questions. So let me, why don't you continue and I'll
Okay.
read the question.
One of the questions was foods to balance blood sugar, because we did talk a little bit about blood sugar on the fasting and what creates high blood sugar in the morning. And you kind of talked about this a little bit about the liver storing glycogen, which is sugar. And at night, the liver will release it. So some people will wake up with high fasting blood sugars in the morning, and that oftentimes depending on what they ate the night before, they will have higher blood sugar in the morning. But a pre-diabetic or a diabetic oftentimes will wake up with high fasting blood sugars in the morning. And so the question was, what foods balance blood sugar? Well, those would be fats and protein would be my first choice. Making sure that the carbohydrates are what we call complex carbohydrates. So those coming from plants. And then that is going to lead us to the next question, how many carbs, but let's stay here for a minute. So someone who wakes up with high fasting blood glucose first of all, you've been insulin resistant probably for a decade. And so we've talked about this a little bit, the insulin resistance being the cell has receptor sites all around it for insulin, and insulin has a key, and it carries the sugar along, opens the cell up and dumps the sugar in the cell, right? When you get insulin resistance, the cell changes the lock. And so the insulin comes along and that key doesn't work anymore. So it goes to another one, another cell. Pretty soon it's going to fill up your liver. It's going to fill up your muscles with glycogen. And then it's going to make fat cells because it needs somewhere to put the sugar. That's insulin resistance. So if someone's pre-diabetic, let's say they're waking up in the morning and their fasting blood glucose is 110 or something, or they're diabetic, they've been insulin resistant for a long time prior to that point. So it's not something that's fixed immediately, but we have seen, especially on, we just finished our 10-day metabolic turnaround. We've seen people with higher fasting glucose in the morning definitely drop it by eating the right food. So protein and fat are going to be obviously healthy fat, olive oil, coconut oil. I like to use avocado oil for any like stir fries or something like that. We do eat grass-fed butter. We talked about that on one of the other podcasts from Happy Cows, grass-fed butter. So the healthy fats and a good portion of protein with each meal. And then your carbohydrates coming from plants. So that would be like a sweet potato or cauliflower, something like that. You can also use legumes like beans. Beans are really high in fiber. So anything high in fiber is going to stabilize blood sugar. So beans are a great one for that as well. Fruits are, that's a good question because people ask about fruit, right? So there are high glycemic fruits. There are fruits that will raise blood sugar fairly quickly, banana being one of those fruits. But there's fruits like berries that are wonderful because they are very low in sugar and they don't raise blood sugar quickly. Another one is kiwi fruit. For all you folks over there in New Zealand and Australia, you have a lot of kiwi. But the kiwi is a good one. And actually, interestingly enough, watermelon is not a real high glycemic. It's mostly water. So there are some fruits, like for instance, in our programs, we'll have a approved fruit list that won't elevate blood sugar quickly. And so you have to watch the fruit if you're pre-diabetic or diabetic, because it does turn to sugar in the body. I always like to say, if you're going to eat a carbohydrate like a fruit or something, put some clothes on it. Okay, so like an apple, put some peanut butter on there or some almond butter on your apple, or eat a piece of cheese with your apple, put some clothes on it, because you want to slow down that fruit from turning to sugar in the body. And putting some fat or protein with the sugar, with the fruit, can definitely slow it down. And it doesn't jack up that blood sugar really quickly. You want a slow release of that sugar into the bloodstream, and then you don't get a big insulin response, right? So those were all questions we had on blood sugar. Did you have anything else there, Jimmy, that you saw?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things I would like to add to so you're talking about fruits. So one thing it's important to note is fruit. When we talk about eating fruits, we're talking about eating fruits. We're not talking about fruit juice. Fruit juice is actually terrible for you, especially if you use those juice extractors. Those are actually terrible for you because they extract, they say they remove the pulp, which is all the fiber, and what you're left with is the fructose. Fructose is bad sugar, right? So when we're talking about eating fruits, you actually have to eat it. You actually have to chew it. Just those simple actions, are super important. And the reason why fruits do raise your sugar, but not as fast as, like, let's say a simple carbohydrate like bread, pasta, white rice, and all that stuff, because it has that fiber. The fiber prevents your body from spiking absorbing the sugar from the fruits and spiking your blood sugar. That's why it's important to eat your fruits, because of the fiber that's in the fruits. So just want to make sure that everybody understands, you don't just go out and buy some fruit juice. That's actually a terrible idea. It's no different than just eating ice cream. There was a comment on the previous on our previous podcast about someone saying they are doing keto, right? The keto diet, high fat diet, and that it was helping regulate their blood sugar, which is true. It can help you regulate your blood sugar. However, the keto diet, there's different types of keto diets out there. I actually had a anesthesiologist as a patient, and he was struggling with multiple sclerosis,
Mm.
and he was following a diet of another physician. Her name escapes my brain, but she basically reversed her MS through diet.
Yes, I know who that is. Yeah.
What was her
I don't
name?
remember her name either. Yeah, yeah.
Anyways, so she wrote this diet, and she wrote this book, and it's about she also is a component a pro I mean she supports keto diet. But here's the thing of keto diet, right? Yes, initially it helps, but he was doing it like he was getting like pig fat, animal protein fat. He was doing that type of fats, right? As a keto diet. That's terrible for you, because that is, you can say bad fats. So you got to watch and what type of keto diet that you're following. But even if you're following the healthier keto diet, it's not something that you want to do long term as well, because again, that overtaxes the liver. Just like sugar, the fat and excess protein, it will overtax your liver. And the liver is the last organ you want to overwork, because again, it has so many important functions, especially detoxing the body. And last thing that I wanted to add before Chris, you can continue. I was actually just with my wife at the optometrist when I before this podcast, and he took his whole family to Italy. So I think in the probably the very first podcast, I mentioned a friend went to Japan and ate foods. He was a diabetic, but he went to Japan, ate everything, every sweet, carb, whatever. He did not limit himself, and his blood sugar actually dropped. Well, I just talked to this optometrist, took his whole family to Italy. He is allergic to gluten here in the US, right? And so like he says that his throat will swell up, his ears will get red when he eats gluten here in the US. So when he went to Italy the first 3 days, he didn't try to eat any pasta, pizza, which is, that's why you go to Italy, right? And so he avoided it for 3 days. And then he's like, okay, let me just try it. So he started nipping on a little, little of their like croutons, a little piece of bread, and no reaction. So he ate a little more, still no reaction. Then he was like, okay, I'm gonna get a pizza. I'm gonna get some pasta, bring it all on. So he was
Yeah.
eating all of that stuff, no reaction.
Yep.
I mean, it's just like the food here in the US is being controlled by big food. They're manipulating these synthetic foods that are no longer foods. So that's why it's so important you have to go organic. You don't have a choice, because the food here is terrible, right? It is no longer food. We're eating chemicals. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
just like everywhere but the US is controlling, how they, manipulate food. And, I think, if you're watching this podcast, you probably already know we're getting banned by Facebook. Like Facebook's not allowing us to do these podcasts. I don't know why. We'll figure out why, but it could be the information that we're sharing, right? So just FYI. But I just found that interesting that even in
Yeah.
Italy, the food is pure compared to here.
Yes. And I've heard that from so many clients, Jimmy. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many clients I've heard that from. They go there and they tolerate it fine. They come home and they start eating the breads and stuff here, and they totally flare up.
Yeah.
And of course, even here in the US, what we know is that they spray it with glyphosate, right? Roundup. And it's done prior to harvesting so that they can get it all dead at once. So they can harvest it all at once. And so it's really saturated with glyphosate. That's a huge part of it. The other thing is it's not your original heritage wheat. So if you look back on pictures in the 1800s, the wheat was it was as tall as people were, right? It was hugely tall. The hybridized. Now it's real short. It's about the tall as your knee. And they've increased the gluten content in the wheat. it's accelerated because what do we want in the US? What do we ask for? White, fluffy bread,
Yeah.
We don't want this hard wheat that's, brown. We want all this white, fluffy stuff. So they've changed the wheat incredibly. So in Europe and in Italy, I've heard this from so many people, it's heritage wheat. It is the original wheat and it's not sprayed. They don't allow them to spray glyphosate there. So big difference in food quality, like you said, here in the US. And unfortunately, big ag and all those things run everything. So here we are. And even if you eat organic wheat here in the US, you're going to find that it's still hybridized. It can be hybridized and called organic. The closest to heritage wheat would be something called Eichhorn wheat.
Mhm.
It's EIKHORN, I believe. Eichhorn wheat is starting to be growing here. You can order it online. Of course, you have to make your own bread. I don't think too many people are doing that, but that's an option if you want to do that. But very good point on that. And then I will say something on the ketogenic diet. I had a client, this is about 6 or 7 months ago, come to me, and she'd been on the keto diet for 3 years, never stopped. She said she was almost like ADD with it, right? She was just obsessed, kicked her into diabetes because every time she tried to add in any carbohydrates, her blood sugar would go, her pancreas didn't even know what to do with it anymore. It didn't understand what a carb was. It just was overreacting to everything. So she's now a diabetic. So I caution people. We've been able to gradually, get her to add in a little bit more carbs at a time, but we've had to really, and it's been we're working on probably 8 or 9 months now. And of course, she gained some weight and that really bothered her. And I said, well, it's going to happen until we get things stabilized and metabolically get your body working the way it was supposed to work. But that is the caution I give people on women, especially going keto for long periods of time, short periods of time. And as you said, not the bacon and sausage keto. That is the worst. And or eating like the Atkins diet you talked about on the last podcast, right? It was butter and cheese and meat and, oh my gosh, terrible. So caution on that. You can go lower carb for a period of time. So that leads me into talking about carbs, because this was a question we had in our private Facebook group this week with the course that we were running. How many carbs a day should I eat? We don't tell people in our programs how much to eat. And that really kind of shocked people in the beginning. They were like, well, what's the serving size? I think we've gotten so used to somebody telling us, okay, you can have a half a cup of this or whatever. And our focus is, if you're eating real food, you're going to be satiated. You'll reach a point of satiation. And we're not eating foods that you can overeat on, like white rice, like you said. So how many carbs was a question that we got for them transitioning out of our program. So that's a great question. And of course, the answer is, like you said in the Facebook group, Jimmy, nobody likes to hear, it depends. Right? It depends. If you're insulin resistant, if you're diabetic and you're really struggling with blood sugar numbers, it's going to be different than someone like you or me, right? You show pictures of you guys eating out and you're probably having rice because you're eating at Asian restaurants, right? Yeah. So it depends. I can eat white potatoes or sweet potatoes or whatever because I don't have to worry about my weight and I don't have to worry about my blood sugar numbers. So it's a very different number for someone like you or me versus someone really struggling with blood sugar numbers. So I will say this though, there is a sweet spot that I usually find that most people can do, but the carbs again have to come from plants. Okay. Because when I say this number, you can't go out and drink a Coke. Okay, 100 grams a day is a pretty sweet spot for even those that are insulin dependent. And that number is going to be complex carbohydrates. All right, so 100 grams of carbs from complex carbohydrates. So that goes back to a sweet potato or a butternut squash. I love butternut squash or acorn squash or those kinds of things, really full of fiber. Obviously rich in antioxidants because of the color. Even an apple, like you said, with the fiber in an apple, a lot of pectin in an apple, very high in fiber, but you put some clothes on it. So you're going to put some clothes on that apple. You're going to have some, piece of goat cheese with it, or you're going to have some peanut butter with it or something like that. and slow that carbohydrate response into the body. But if I find with my clients, I've got those who want to track everything. They want to know the app. They want to track everything. Now I have those that are like, I don't want to track anything. I don't want you to tell me how many grams of carbs they have. So, everybody's different, right? Some people find it, they geek out on the tracking carbs and stuff, which if you're a diabetic and you're on insulin, you probably have to. But your average person, if you're eating real food, and I'll say this, oftentimes to my clients, or even into, in our Facebook group, is, when you start to crave food, like if you're craving sweets, you can very easily overeat sweets, very easily eat 5 or 6 cookies or whatever. But if you're craving sweets and your only option is to sit down and have some salmon and some broccoli, do you think you're going to overeat that? Probably not. It's really hard to overeat real food. So you're going to be full and, you're not going to overeat. So we have a world that has grocery store aisles that are completely committed to cereal boxes. You can well overeat a box of cereal. You can sit down and eat a whole box of cereal, right? I mean, people can overeat cereal really easily. So those are the kind of carbs that you really have to stay away from for long-term health, and stick with your real carbs from even the fruits that we talked about, and the carbs from the plants, the legumes, the beans, the lentils, those kinds of things are wonderful carbohydrates. And then once you get stabilized with your blood sugar, once you get at a good weight, like Jimmy and I, we can have some carbohydrates. Like if you want your rice with your Chinese food or whatever, your body can tolerate it. But I bet you're not eating that rice all by itself. You're eating it with some protein and some vegetables, right? So that's the key. That's the key.
And so when I eat out, obviously I eat here. So no one's perfect. And I tell our patients, the patients that I've treated, that, my strategy is this: 5 days a week, I will eat perfect. Because I love to eat, but 5 days out of the week, I will eat perfect. And then on the weekends, if I want to go out, I go out and I eat. Now we eat rice is a staple of the Asian culture. So
Right.
we don't eat white rice. So what we eat is we use brown rice, purple rice, wild rice. Now we have a rice cooker that turns that brown rice into what's called GABA rice. And basically what that is it cooks the rice so well that it extracts all of the brown rice, the nutrition from that brown rice, right? And that brown rice or purple rice or wild rice, it does not spike your blood sugar like white rice would. There's a couple of things I wanted to add about, that question about carbs. So here's a couple of other ways that, that I would suggest as well. If you're going to eat sweets, right? You want to, let's say you just want to cheat, okay? And you cheat. If you're going to get some cookies, eat one cookie. Eat one cookie and then drink some water and then wait. Wait about 15 minutes, right? The reason why we tend to overeat is because we're eating faster than like we're eating so much, but it's taking some time for the sugar to get into our bloodstream and for it to register in our brain. And then our brain knows, oh, I ate too much. Well, by that time, you've already eaten 20 cookies, right? So if you just eat one cookie and just wait 10 to 15 minutes and let your brain calibrate that and say, hey, do I have enough, right? So that's one way. Another way, for those of, like you said, some people like to track everything. I love the glucometer. You're testing your blood sugar. Now there's some constant glucose monitor. They're a little more expensive, but you can get these glucometers, which you don't have to be a diabetic to get it. So what you can do is you buy these and the strips, and you buy these little strips. Yes, you got to prick your finger, but what you can do is you can, before, let's say you're testing out how much carbs should I eat, right? You could test your blood sugar before you eat, and then about ideally 2 hours after you eat, but you can do it an hour later, test your blood sugar again. You can do that by testing your carbs. So if your blood sugar shoots beyond 150 after you've eaten, then that's too much carbs for you. So you can track it that way too. So that's a more, I like to say, a more scientific way to track instead of measuring, because the measuring that people give, like all over the website, oh, whether it's how many ounces of carbs, grams per carbs per body weight and stuff like that, that doesn't necessarily is not necessarily accurate because everybody processes carbs differently at different rates. So it doesn't matter you weigh the same. It could be you could be completely different for someone who weighs the same as you, right? And so
Mm.
using the glucometer, that lets you know how fast you're processing carbs. Yes, your finger is going to be hurting if you prick yourself a lot, but that's one of the better ways that you can know how much carbs you actually need. And here's another thing, I'm going to, complicate it even more. It will change from day to day. So that's why, I recommend using the glucometer if you really want something to measure.
And exercise, if you're exercising one day and not the next, that would make a difference,
Oh, huge.
right?
Huge.
Huge difference. We had a question. Somebody wanted to know where to get that rice cooker that you're talking about.
The rice cooker, you can get it on the Amazon. It's it's
Okay.
it's it's this uh it's an elephant brand. I forgot what it's called, like Z something. I'll Google it while you're talking.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. And
Yeah.
I really do like your tips there on the carbs. It makes a big difference. Everybody's metabolically different, right? So we're not all metabolically the same. But think about a 6'5" guy, that weighs 250 in solid muscle versus a little petite 5'2" woman. Your carbohydrates are going to be completely different, for those guys. So really you have to look at the individual person. I will say one thing though, I want to share this right at the end because I thought this was so fascinating. When I was going to school, which is over 20 years ago, so you guys will laugh because it was DOS, dial up, when I went to school. But we were taught something that I think is really holds true. And I still, when I do an intake with a client, I try to figure this out with them. Is they said that we are all basically one of three types. One being a person who is a protein type. In other words, they do better with more protein in their diet. They may be a big muscular guy, or they may not do well stabilizing blood sugar when they eat low protein. There is the mixed type. That's a person who can do a little bit of carb. That's me. I need protein with every meal, but I also need some carbohydrates with my meal. And then the third, which they said is actually a very small percentage of the population, is the carb type. Those are the people who actually do good on a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet with lots of carbs. And I have found when I tell people to track their food and their and blood sugar would be an even more accurate thing, but to track their food intake and do their emotions with, like, for instance, an hour later, right? Like, I ate this food and emotionally, how do I feel? That's a huge connection to what our blood sugar is doing. The other thing is, what are we craving? Are we craving an hour after we eat? Because if we're craving sweets an hour after we eat, we did not have enough protein in the meal because our blood sugar tanked already. So I really think there's something to this, that we're all, kind of one of the three. But it's really, the blood glucose measurement is probably the most accurate thing you could possibly do to know how you react to the food.
Yeah.
And I think
And so
we had
this
some more.
is, yeah, so I typed in, it was a Zojirushi rice cooker. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
what I ended up, I put it in the chat. But yeah, so,
Yeah.
you know, you may be thinking, man, there's so many details, right? To this, like, I didn't realize. You may be thinking, hey, wow, I didn't realize I got to do all this stuff. Well, these are simple. If you listen to what Chris and I are saying, these are simple strategies. And yes, if you go Google online, you will find millions of strategies and you will get confused. And that's why, Chris and I are doing this podcast. We're trying to help you simplify, sort out all of the, other information, because more information is not better. You need simple, straightforward, to the point information. Health, surprisingly, is not hard. Health, let me just make sure I finish this. So health actually is simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Now, we make things, we make things complicated by going to this source, Googling, adding all this information, and we get confused. And usually what ends up happening is analysis paralysis, where people just do nothing, right? So that's what Chris and we wanted to bring something new to, to the world, to the public, and to help, everybody all around the world with simple strategies that can make huge impacts on your health. I like to say small hinges swing big doors. You don't need to make drastic changes, big changes, in order to improve your health. And so if you would like that simple, straightforward guidance on how to restore your organ function, because that's the root cause, and how to get a better quality of life, Chris and we've developed these programs, right? Our next program that we're running is a 28-day metabolic reset. It starts next Monday. You want to get on it right now. The promotion is $47. It's normally $97. Again, it's simple. We take you simple strategies, easy. I wouldn't say easy. It's simple to do, very simple to do, very simple to follow, right? As you can see through this podcast, we explain it in simple terms, and we're going to guide you through the next 28 days. So those of y'all may have already been through our 10-day, which is great. You had a great start. You can continue. If you still need help, you still need that accountability, that guidance, step-by-step guidance, join on the 28-day, all right? We'll put it in the comments below how you can sign up. But Chris, any last words before we log off?
No, I love that. What is it? Small hinges swing big doors.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So just a really simple example with somebody in our recent program that we did with fasting blood sugar. She's a diabetic in the morning, she's waking up like 160, 170 high. And I suggested that she walk for 15 minutes after dinner at night. I said, after dinner, go for a walk. So she did actually 20. She went out 10, turned around, came back. Next morning, her blood sugar was 120. She couldn't believe it. So she didn't do it the next night, back up high. Walked again the next night, back down low. Simple, right? A small hinge swung a big door for her. So those are the kind of things that we teach you guys, and that are simple to do and really make a profound impact on your health. So we'd be delighted to have you join us.
Exactly. All right, guys, we will see y'all next week, but we'll find a way. We'll find a way to get this information out to you, because everybody needs this information. All right, Everybody have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye.